Welcome back in, everybody, to GM Territory. Jim, you recently just wrote an article for The Athletic discussing key X factors for the American League and National League for teams that are contending for a playoff spot. I want to go through them with you, if that's okay. And I want to start with the American League East and the New York Yankees.
Yeah, so for them, all rise. That's what we do when Aaron Judge is in the lineup. And as we know, the reigning MVP is one of the best power hitters of this era. And as he goes, the Yankees go. And when Aaron Judge is not in the lineup, it just seems like, oh, sit. And the Yankees don't have the same offense. And they've been one of the worst offenses in baseball since Aaron Judge went on the injured list. Now, the good news for the Yankees is they've got Cody Bellinger coming off the injured list. That is going to be huge for them as well. But they're going to need Judge if they're going to be able to get back to the playoffs and possibly get back to the World Series. So they're hoping Aaron Judge comes back sometime in September. The rib is healing, which is a good sign, but he's not ready anytime soon. But I think he can be a real X factor for the New York Yankees down the stretch.
Yeah, I also think Cody Bellinger is another X factor, right? I mean, they're bottom five, like you said, when Judge isn't in the lineup offensively. And I think Cody Bellinger is another bat that they've been missing. And, I think the two of them combined are definitely some key X factors there. Let's talk about another left-handed bat for the Boston Red Sox and Roman Anthony. Man, I saw him hit a bomb the other night on a rehab assignment, and it looks like he's back.
Yeah, I think, we all look at Roman Anthony as the future of the Red Sox. If we want to look at who's going to be the future face of Boston, it's going to be Roman Anthony. He's going to be in that long line of great left fielders that the Red Sox have had, from Carl Yastrzemski to Jim Rice, and Roman Anthony is going to probably continue that history. Unfortunately for him this year, he has only made 130 plate appearances because of a partial tear of his tendon connected to his right finger that he suffered in early May on a check swing in a game against the Tigers in Detroit. But as you mentioned, he has started his rehab. He could be reinstated this week, and he could be a real X factor for Boston down the stretch. They're playing well. They have since the beginning of July. They're in a really good position to get one of the wild card berths, but Roman Anthony might be the difference maker, not just getting them there. He could be the difference maker in a short series in October.
Yeah, and, I had it up on the graphic there, but the Red Sox, their leadoff spot, they're the lowest OPS in baseball right now. And, not saying that Roman would be hitting leadoff, but that's definitely, they need another bat in that lineup for sure. All right, let's move on now to the Toronto Blue Jays. Vladdy Jr., we know he's had a pretty disappointing season. Why was he your X factor?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's been on the injured list for a concussion, but this is a guy that has 0 home runs at Rogers Center this year. No home runs at home. Like, is that even possible? I mean, last year, 23 homers and a 4.6 WAR. This year, he's got a 0.9 WAR. This is their best player. And I just feel like if Junior gets hot, look, I have predicted all along the Blue Jays would get that final wild card berth in the American League. I don't know if I'm going to be right, but if I am going to be right, Vladdy Daddy has got to have a September to remember. I think he's capable of doing that. His power needs to reappear. He's too talented not to. Still can't get over it. Doesn't have a single home run at home this year. I think that'll change come September.
Yeah, I hope that changes come September. I always love watching Vladdy Jr. play. He's one of my favorites to watch. All right, I now want to round out with the Baltimore Orioles. You had Ryan Helsley and Felix Bautista here as your two X factors.
Yeah, I'm surprised Baltimore's still in the race. It's pretty fun, and I think there's a good possibility that 4 of the 5 American League East teams make the playoffs. And yeah, I said that. I won't be surprised if 3 wildcard teams actually come out of the East. I just don't know if it's going to be the Orioles. I kind of feel like they're going to be the outside looking in. But who could change that? Well, Helsley and or Bautista. They've struggled in the bullpen. They seem to have gotten their starting rotation together. They had a great weekend against the Tampa Bay Rays. But I kind of feel like if they could add 1 or 2 back-end closers that can stop and hold those close game leads, that could be a difference maker for Baltimore and make those crab cakes and remoulade sauce and bay sprinkle on top of it taste even better.
That sounds pretty good. That sounds really good. All right, let's switch over now to a different division. I want to start with the Minnesota Twins. They've been, in my opinion, one of the more fun teams in baseball to watch. them and the White Sox definitely exceeding expectations this season. Who's your X factor for the Twins?
I had a hard time coming up with one that kind of fit and worked, and then I landed on first baseman Royce Lewis, who moved from third to first this year. He's only 27 years old. You know, he does have 13 homers and 45 RBIs in the big leagues. He had a bunch of homers when he was optioned to the minor leagues. He's stolen 11 bases and 11 attempts. I just think he could be a guy that makes a difference in the middle of the lineup. I almost went with Walker Jenkins, their top prospect, who continues to tear it up in the minor leagues. I just don't understand why the Twins haven't promoted him to the big leagues. Because if they had done that, I probably would have picked Jenkins as an X factor, a guy that could make a difference down the stretch. But I was looking for one, didn't really find one besides Jenkins, landed on Lewis just because I've always loved his potential. Production has never equaled the potential, but maybe in September of this year, maybe he does become the X factor for Minnesota.
Yeah, I really like Royce Lewis's swing a whole lot. I think he has a ton of pop, and I remember watching a couple of games this season where, man, that dude just drills the baseball. It's so much fun to watch. Speaking of players that is also fun to watch, Jose Ramirez for the Cleveland Guardians. You had him as their X factor. Talk me through it.
Yeah, I actually had two guys there, right? I want to start with Angel Anoa. I'm going to put him first because the rookie was brought up to give this team a spark. He's their best prospect. If he can live up to any close to his potential, he could be the X factor that gives them that spark and shock down the stretch. Otherwise, yeah, let's talk about Ramirez. He came back from the injured list on a very aggressive time frame from his hamate bone surgery. Far cry from 100%. However, recently, finally getting closer to 100%. The recoveries from these injuries could linger, there's no doubt. But when Ramirez is at his best, he's a Hall of Famer. When Ramirez is at his best, he can put this team on his back and carry them. Ramirez has to be the X factor. I want Haneo to be it, but if push comes to shove, and this race is going to go down to the end. You and I both know that. I think the White Sox are still the team to beat, but I don't think Cleveland's going anywhere. They've been to the postseason too many times. Their starting pitching 1-5 is really deep. They've got a lot of young hitters in this lineup, no doubt. But Jose Ramirez could be that X factor that puts them over the top if the Guardians can get hot in September. Remember, they have the second easiest schedule of all the American League teams in September.
Oh, I did not know that. Second easiest schedule. Wow. All right, let's now move on to the Detroit Tigers and one of my personal favorites, Jackson Jobe.
Yeah, Jackson Jobe has to be an X factor for them because at the trade deadline, they traded Tarek Skubal, they traded Casey Mize, and you can't do that unless someone steps up in the rotation. Jackson Jobe has that potential of doing that. When he was coming up in their system, he was one of the best prospects in baseball. He and Andrew Painter of the Phillies. Both of those guys ended up with Tommy John surgery. Both of them are now trying to come back. Jobe throwing the ball at 97, has really good secondary pitches. He is going to have to step up. And I don't just mean trying to get the Tigers to get there. If the Tigers make it to an October playoff, he's going to have to start playoff games for them. So I think he's definitely an X factor for Detroit. A lot of pressure on the young starter, but the Tigers front office put the pressure on him when they traded Skubal and Mize at the deadline.
Yeah, they sure did. I know he's been out most of the season due to injury. But you know what we've seen from the first couple of seasons that he's had in the big leagues is nothing but a lot of potential. I mean, that four-seam fastball is nothing to mess with. The slider, his sinker, changeup, curveball, he has a really good mix. And man, when he can get ahead in counts against these hitters, he can be untouchable. So I'm a big fan of Jobe, and I hope that he rounds into form soon. All right, Jim, I now want to move on to our last division here. Let's start with the Texas Rangers. Who is your X factor?
Yeah, so for the Texas Rangers, I'm going with Corey Seager, the veteran whose entire career has been all about injuries, but when he's healthy, we know what Corey Seager is. In the biggest moments, at the biggest times, in the biggest stage, Corey Seager steps up. He has won 2 World Series MVPs, one with the Dodgers and one with the Rangers. That's how good he is when the moments count the most. He's been limited in his games this year. He's hovered around 200 most of the year. But on a player that's getting paid $31.5 million through 2031, the Rangers are paying him to be their best player, which he is when he's healthy. And I think the impact that he can have for the Rangers down the stretch is the same as Jose Ramirez's impact with the Cleveland Guardians. No doubt he's the X factor for them. If the Rangers are going to see October, and they have the pitching to get there, the offense relies around Corey Seager and Wyatt Langford. If they're both healthy and they're raking in September, Texas is not going away with a chance to win. No doubt in my mind, he is the X factor this year for Texas.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I also want to talk about another middle infielder now, your X factor for the Houston Astros, Carlos Correa.
Yeah, look, I talked to Dana Brown, the general manager of the Astros, earlier on Sunday, asked him about Correa. He does think there's a chance that he could be able to come back in mid-September. So he's not close, but he could come back. He said he's working extremely hard. And, he reminded me of how much he means for this team in the clubhouse and for the fan base. Talked to me a lot about his elite leadership, his teammate qualities, and what a difference maker those intangibles that Carlos Correa brings to the table. He said he's been watching his rehab every single day, that nobody works harder than Carlos Correa has to get back on the field. He still hasn't done the lateral work it takes to get close, but he does believe, based on his medical staff, he could return in mid-September. And look, if Houston's fighting to win the West and they're in a battle with Texas and Seattle, as expected, Correa could be the guy, whether it's a walk-off home run or whether it's just his leadership in the dugout and on the field. Correa could be that player that makes a difference for Houston down the stretch.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see Carlos Correa back out on the field. All right, Jim, let's round out the American League here with the Seattle Mariners. Who are your X factors?
Yeah, so I want to start with this. My opinion, right or wrong, is the Mariners are going to win the West. That's right. I'm making that call here. I wrote an article about that on The Athletic that was posted this morning. I just believe their starting pitching 1-6 is better than everyone else in this division. And it's amazing to me that the Mariners are where they are, getting no production from Cal Raleigh. This is a guy that a year ago was the finishing second in MVP to Aaron Judge. Remember, he hit 60 homers. Remember, he drove in 125 runs. It's hard to believe he's hitting 158. It's hard to believe he only has 14 home runs. I don't even know how to fathom somebody having that much of a drop off in 1 year. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I don't think there has been anyone since the 1800s. Cal Raleigh is an X factor. If he gets hot and starts to perform like he did a year ago, that'll be a difference maker for them. I talked to Jerry Dipoto, the president of the Mariners. I asked him the same question. Who is your X factor? I thought he was going to say Raleigh. He didn't. He said Julio Rodríguez. I asked him why. He said because he's such a streaky player. And this year he was streaky opposite of normal. What I mean by that is in other years, normally J-Rod gets off to a slow start, finishes strong. This year he got off to a strong start and then has kind of slumped recently. But if J-Rod gets hot, as Jerry Dipoto pointed out to me, he can carry this team on the back. Now imagine if both Raleigh and Rodríguez get hot in September. My opinion, there's no stopping Seattle in that case. They do need their pitchers to pitch up to capability, which really none of their starters or relievers have done this year. But, sometimes you got to look at this team on paper or in this generation on digital, and you got to say this is the best rounded, deepest team in the division. If their star players can live up to their potential, there's no stopping Seattle. Raleigh, Rodríguez, they're the X factors for Seattle in September.
I might even go as far to say that this team could be a legitimate World Series threat out of the American League. That's what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Trey. And by the way, if you're viewing this, will you do us a favor and hit the subscribe button, please? Hit the like button. It goes a long way. Really helps the channel. So thanks very much for doing that.
It sure does. All right, everyone, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to go over the National League X Factors. We'll be right back.
Bella, where? I don't know where Bella is, but I know how to take care of my pup.
Kratz, while you find Bella, today's episode is sponsored by the ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program. The ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program offers customizable accident and illness plans that can fit your budget, your lifestyle, and even your pet's particular quirks. Because let's be honest, vet bills can add up fast. And when it's time to submit a claim, it's easy. Just use their app and receive reimbursement for eligible vet bills directly into your bank account so you can get back to focusing on what really matters, your pet. To explore coverage, visit aspcapetinsurance.com/foul. That's aspcapetinsurance.com/FOUL. This is a paid advertisement. Insurance is underwritten by either Independence American Insurance Company or United States Fire Insurance Company and produced by PTZ Insurance Agency Limited. The ASPCA is not an insurer and is not engaged in the business of insurance.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back into GM territory. It is now time to go over our National League X Factors. Jim, I want to start out with the Philadelphia Phillies. Who do you got for me?
Yeah, I'm going to go with their fourth and fifth starters, Aaron Nola and Painter. Look, if the Phillies are going to win the NL East or get a wild card berth, they're going to have to succeed with their fourth and fifth starters. Now, the good news is Andrew Painter's had two really good starts in a row, and Aaron Nola is much better over his last 4 or 5 starts. But keep in mind, this team most of the year until recently has really struggled with their fourth and fifth starters. But if Nola and Painter can pitch the way they have recently, Philadelphia is going to catch the Braves, let alone get a wild card berth. That's how good they can be. I've been really impressed with the adjustments that Painter has made, especially with a four-seam fastball at the top of the zone. The velo is up, the spin rate's improved, the vertical drop on the breaking ball has gotten better. And for Aaron Nola, it seems like he's finally making adjustments there. So there's no doubt in my mind, if Nola and Painter can make the Phillies play at least 500 when they pitch, right? That allows Christopher Sanchez, Zach Wheeler, and Luzardo to do what they do, which is run the table. If that happens, the Phillies not only going to make the playoffs, I think they're going to catch and go past the Atlanta Braves because that would give them 5 starters. The offense, still questionable. There's no question about that. But I do think Painter and Nola are the X factors for Philly.
Yeah, I'm going to give you my X factor here, and that's Luis Arraez. He's been nothing but phenomenal for the Phillies since he's gotten there. I mean, he's getting on base. He's a table setter. He's a tone setter. And I think the fan base is really falling in love with him, and I think the clubhouse is as well. I look at that lineup on paper, and I'm thinking with Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Stott, who's also been playing a lot better, Brandon Marsh, who's had almost a career year this season batting average-wise, and then Real Munto. I look at that lineup, and I think, man, if we can just pitch. So with Andrew Painter.
Well, here's my pushback on that, though. Brandon Marsh really hasn't hit since the All-Star break. He has struggled. JT Realmuto, age and decline has really gotten him. He hasn't been productive. But I want to back up your point about Luis Arraez being an X factor. And I want to credit manager Don Mattingly for the way he's built his lineup. You know, when they traded for Arraez, I thought they were getting him to hit at the top of the lineup, create traffic, and allow some of Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper's home runs to be 2-run shots or 3-run shots instead of solo shots. But what Don Mattingly did and said, which was fascinating and has worked, is he put Arraez in the 4 spot and Bowman in the 5 spot. So why? Well, it made a lot of sense because neither one of them strike out. They both put the ball in play, right? So when you're sitting and you're stacking Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, and Bryce Harper at the top of the order, those are the 3 guys that are going to do damage. Those are the 3 guys that carry this offense. But when they're on base, to have Arraez and Bowman put the ball in play, good things are going to happen. And if you look at it over the last 30 days, Alec Bohm leads this team in runs batted in. He only has 1 homer, but he leads the team in RBIs. And so give credit to Don Mattingly on how he has positioned Arraez and Bohm hitting behind those big 3 guys. So I do like your point a lot about Arraez being an X factor.
It's also been fun seeing Arraez hit a couple of homers so far at Citizens Bank. I know he's had 2 to right field that were just really fun to watch. I love watching his swing just in general. He is just so quick. All right, I now want to move on to another team in the National League East, the Miami Marlins. Jim, give us your X factor.
Yeah, so with the Miami Marlins, I'm going to go with Yuri Perez, the right-handed pitcher. He's really looks like he is putting things together. I love the shutout on August 11th against the Pirates. 7 innings, 3 hits, punched out 7, walked 2. I really like that. He came back on August 16. I believe you were at the game. Shut out the Reds in Cincinnati, 6 innings of 2-hit ball. If he could continue to mix his secondary pitches as he did the last 2 starts, I think he could be a difference maker with the Fish. Look, I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they're going to stay in the race. I don't think they're an October team, but Yuri Perez is going to have a lot to do with it if they can pull off a miracle.
Yeah, I was at that game. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, he was absolutely lights out. It's so much fun watching him pitch. Speaking about another exciting pitcher in the National League Central, I want to talk about Ben Brown, who's finally back. Tell me about him, Jim.
Yeah, good X factor. I like that call there. I agree with you. He's been on the injured list, right? Recovering from a neck stress reaction that he occurred in late June. The good news is he's throwing the bullpen sessions at Wrigley. Should be ready to return in early September. But think about what Ben Brown was doing before the injury. Okay, 1.85 ERA, 8 games started, 12 relief appearances. How about a 0.941 WHIP and 65 punchouts in 68 innings? He could be a difference maker that lifts this staff down the stretch. Great name you brought up. I love it. I think he can be an X factor for the Cubs. I agree with you.
All right, now what about the St. Louis Cardinals? Who'd you have for them?
Joshua Baez, baby, who can forget his major league debut a week ago Saturday when he hit a home run on the first pitch and followed up that with 2 more homers, which became the greatest debut in major league history of any player. And the exciting part of that day, if you remember, he hit 1 homer off a fastball, 1 off a slider, 1 off a changeup, right? He reminds me of a cross between Juan Gonzalez and Odelis Garcia. I absolutely love this guy's power. And remember, in the minor leagues, before he got promoted, 34 homers and 90 RBIs. I think the power that he brings to the table extends the lineup for St. Louis, makes them much more potent. And I think if the Cardinals were to pull off a miracle in September and somehow make the playoffs, I think Joshua Baez could be that X factor for him.
Well, I tell you what, I'd be looking forward to seeing him hitting more home runs to left, center, and right. He is an exciting player to watch. Speaking of another exciting player to watch, the Pittsburgh Pirates X Factor, I think it goes without being said, it's got to be Paul Skenes. Jim, your thoughts?
They got to get him right, and they got to get him back being an ace. He won the Cy Young last year. When he first came to the major leagues, what was it about him that was so dominant, right? It was the fastball and the splinter. They were 2 pitches that nobody could touch. A lot has changed since then. A weight gain, mechanical changes, changes in the repertoire. He's wanted to work on this pitch and that pitch. He wanted to add shapes and sizes. Now, all of a sudden, the splinter isn't as dominant. The fastball doesn't have the same spin right. The breaking ball doesn't have the same vertical break. And he's been a mess. Well, he's working on things to get back to form. We all know he can get back there. He's not hurt, right? It's just mechanics and probably not being in his best shape that he could be in. Paul Skenes is a competitor. Paul Skenes is a winner. But if the Pirates are going to come back and pull off a miracle, which, they're in a similar place that the 2011 Cardinals were. The Cardinals in 11 were 7.5 games back, and they ended up winning the World Series. So the Pirates are about that back in the standings. I'm not giving up on them. This is one of the best offenses in baseball, right? They made a lot of moves at the deadline. The bullpen over the last 30 days is much improved. And when this rotation is pitching at its best, it can win and get to the playoffs. So they're going to get Connor Griffin back in September. I could have used him as an X factor. I wanted to, but then I'm like, no, because you're not getting there without Skenes being an ace. They need Skenes to be the guy he was a year ago. They got a chance that happens. He's the X factor for the Berg.
I like your take on Paul Skenes there, and I can definitely see Connor Griffin also being an X factor for this team. All right, everybody, we're going to take another short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the X factors in the National League West. We'll be right back.
One of the things that I wasn't very good at was playing Major League Baseball. One of the things that I'm really good at is sweating. Even now, when I'm not playing, I need hydration. I need to make sure it's convenient. That's why I choose Quince.
Yep. Quince electrolyte stick packs to the rescue, Kratz. They taste great, and the zero sugar options are stevia-free. They're keto approved, naturally sweetened with fermented rice. And like everything Quince does, they're thoughtfully made and priced well at $20 for 30 servings. They're less than half of the leading brand. Give your body what it really needs to stay hydrated. Go to quince.com/foul for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/FOUL for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/foul. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
All righty, Jim. Let's go over our 2 X factors in the National League West. I want to start with the San Diego Padres. Who do you got for me?
I'm going to go with Joe Musgrove, who's still on the injured list. If you remember, he had Tommy John surgery in October of 2024, and he hasn't pitched in a major league game since. However, the good news is he's on his way back. He's had really successful rehab starts as well. His velocity has been around 95, 97. He's been able to hold that velocity in his starts throughout the entire start, so that's exciting. And if you add him to the rotation that has just also added Casey Mize and Robbie Ray at the trade deadline to go along with Michael King and the rest of that rotation, Walker Buehler and Randy Vasquez, all of a sudden this rotation looks deep and strong. I think he's an X factor for them. If Musgrove can get back to form, it could put San Diego in a position where they can run the table in October. I think they're going to get in as the third wildcard team in the National League. But I think they're also a team like the Brewers that can beat the Dodgers in a short series. Musgrove may be that X factor that pushes them over the top.
Yeah, 95 to 97 in a couple of his last rehab starts. That's pretty impressive. It looks like he's almost ready to come back to the big league rotation. All right, let's now finish off with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Jim, who do you have for us?
Yeah, I didn't know where to go here. Obviously, the biggest concern is Ketel Marte trying to get his knee healthy and deal with his whole situation, which has been a distraction. They're still in the race here. It's going to be tough without Marte, so I was trying to think of who can be the X factor to pick them up while he's on the injured list. So I'm going to go with Jordan Lawler, who also was just reinstated from the injured list after missing 2 months with a severe strained right hamstring. You know, when he was on the rehab assignment, Lawler homered in 3 straight games, which just shows you the potential that he has. You know, I've always said when he's fully developed, he's going to be a 300 hitter with 15 to 20 homers, 25 to 30 stolen bases. He's done it in the minors. It's only a matter of time that he does it to the big leagues. He is the one guy on this roster offensively that can really make a difference down the stretch if all of a sudden he breaks out and makes a statement. So I'm going to go with Jordan Lawler as being the X factor for the Diamondbacks in September.
Yeah, he's been a really fun player to watch last couple games for sure. And, you know, I think his speed is also, I mean, it's slept on. That guy can move. He can absolutely move.
And he's got versatility, of course, playing center field for them now, but he also came up as an infielder. Before we leave, Trey, I just wanted to remind you, I don't know if you watch preseason NFL football, but the Dallas Cowboys are 2-0. Undefeated as they whooped the Cardinals on Saturday. Not that I was paying attention, but just wanted to let you know. I know it's all mostly backup players and players that won't be starting week 1. But being a big Cowboys fan, it's been a long time since they were 2-0. And in fact, if they win next week to go to 3-0 in the preseason, it'll be the first time a Cowboys team has done that since Bill Parcells was the coach. And that was a year that the Cowboys had the best record in the NFC that year in the regular season. Well, maybe that's a sign. I don't know. We'll wait and see. How about your Bills? How have they done in the preseason?
Oh, you know, in this past weekend, we did pretty well. You know, we won 34-7 against the Cleveland Browns. Again, none of our starters were playing, but it was so fun to just see what kind of depth we have. You know, there are certain players I'm really rooting for to make the team. But you know, I was looking at the schedule and I'm thinking, man, this schedule is really tough. This might be like a 7-win year for the Bills. And that's just me just putting it out there. I'm telling you right now, the way that the schedule starts, the way that the season starts, everyone's going to freak out when we're 0-3 and then we're going to win against New England week 4. And it's going to be like, okay, I think the Bills are back on track. But I'm going to be a pessimist about the Bills. I normally am right until we start and I see Josh Allen just running in for a touchdown. Then I'm like, all right, we're all the way back. So,
all right, that tells me we need to stick to baseball. So that's what we're going to do here. Thanks to all our listeners for viewing the show. Please hit the subscribe button and the like button. It helps go a long way. And Trey and I are really glad that we can talk about baseball next week. You definitely want to join us. We'll be hitting on all of the award races for down the stretch. So stay locked right here at GM's Territory. He's Trey Bowden. I'm Jim Bowden. In the meantime, ciao and chillax.
We gone.